welcome to Inside Style. I am your host, George Worrell. Today, we're talking about all things travel and vacation, Washington, D.C. We are lucky enough today to have a veteran in the industry, my good friend, Mr. Elliott Ferguson, who's the president and CEO of Destination DC. Mr. Ferguson, welcome.
Hey, George. Good to be here.
Thank you so much for coming and talking about our favorite city, Washington, D.C., and all of the wonderful work that you're doing over in Destination D.C. Tell us a little bit about that organization, because people are listening from all over the country and actually the world about coming to Washington. What is that?
Absolutely. Well, to talk about our organization, Destination DC, literally every city has an organization that is focusing on tourism and bringing visitors to a destination. Mm-hmm. Most people think, oh, it's easy because everybody wants to come. But if you really travel outside of the DMV, and especially globally, they have a different feel on Washington. It's government. It's great to go take a picture in front of the White House, in front of the Capitol building, and then we want to go somewhere else fun. So what we do is really economic development. How do we bring visitors to the city overall, but equally as much, how do we bring visitors to Washington that will stay longer and spend more? Those that are already planning on coming, how do we influence them, if you will, to say, well, I will stay an extra couple of days because of a concert or because of something else that they'll see on our website, washington.org, that they should take advantage of. The other component of what we do is convention related. So as we are going after the leisure market, we have representation in 7 different countries outside of the United States. But the meetings market is so different because they're looking at 5 or 6 destinations. And so we're competing heavily to bring that business to Washington, D.C. And as an economic development organization, it's all about how do we create new jobs in Washington, D.C., and of course, the hotel tax, restaurant tax, and other taxes that are generated that visitors and of course Washingtonians have the opportunity to take advantage of.
So the changes that we're seeing in the city over the time that I've been here since '92, lived in New York for a while, came back. Do those changes that you're seeing in the city, does it help, that you're seeing concerts now, that we have a booming fashion industry, all of those things? Does that help your mission?
Absolutely. I mean, it really, the things that really help Washington as a destination would be changes to neighborhoods, whereas Union Market, for example, 8 years ago, no one really went to Union Market.
Yeah, except for chicken to get, for catering. I would go there when I was doing catering.
Yes, but you lived here.
Yeah.
Visitors would not go.
Yeah, that's true.
And the same with NOMA, same with the Wharf, Navy Yard, and where, of course, where the new Audi Field is. These are all redeveloped areas that visitors, not just locals, will then have a chance to take advantage of. And that makes us a unique destination because for those who say, well, I've been to Washington before and I've done the mall experience, I'm like, well, we want you to do the federal experience, the 3 M's, monuments, memorials, and museums, but the real meat of Washington, D.C. as a destination are our neighborhoods, nightlife, theater, architecture, the cultural diversity, and the festivals and events that happen in Washington. And our goal, again, is how do we influence those that are going to stay longer and spend more, which usually skews international visitors, to really choose Washington versus other destinations.
So did this love of what you do, did that start when you were reared in Washington State? How did that all start? Give us
Absolutely. I came out of the womb saying I wanted to go into
I want to go into development.
I want to go into development. No, this is an industry that very few people really understand hospitality. They normally think working in a restaurant or working in a hotel. In the 80s, when I entered the industry in Savannah, Georgia, I immediately said, I don't want to work in a restaurant, I don't want to work in a hotel, I don't want to do tours. But what they don't see are opportunities in terms of being an architect or being involved in finance and all the other areas of expertise. I fell into that category. I was in economic development, but tied to bringing business to the city of Savannah. When the opportunity came my way, I immediately, again, did not know enough about it. But it was interesting because I always appreciated travel. But I did not realize, like most Washingtonians, that there's actually an effort and efforts put forth to really bring visitors to Washington as a destination.
Wow. So from there, moving from, what was your next job after, working in Savannah? What brought you here?
Yeah, absolutely. I was in Savannah for 3 years. I moved to Atlanta in 1991, and as you referenced, I started in. When people say native Washingtonian, I joke I am a native Washingtonian, just the other one.
The other one.
So I was born in Washington State, lived in California for a while, moved to Georgia. 91, 2001, I was there during the Olympics with the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau. And then 9/11 hit. Of course, not necessarily Washington, but it was a pivotal moment in terms of all of us thinking about our safety, our lives, and I was thinking about my career, which I enjoyed, but I felt that the organization saw me as, this is as high as you're going to get within this organization. And equally as much, it wasn't the organization, it was me, because I felt like I was settling. And, that's something that I'm speaking on a lot more now to younger generations, because within that week, I went and said, I'm leaving. Didn't have a job, and they were shocked. What do you mean you're leaving? But it was, and I'm like, I need to practice what I said I wanted to do, which is not just be in one environment, which is ironic because I've been here for 22 years. And then within a short period of time, the opportunity opened itself up here in Washington for me to become Senior VP of Convention Sales and Services, which I was in that role for 7 years and been CEO for 15.
So there was something within you and yourself, and that's what we hope the listeners get from all of our guests. But while you're here today, is that mechanism within yourself about growth and what's around you and where you want your journey to go. So what was that? Was it inbred, or was it the people around you? Was it your wife? It was your family, or was it just something that you had that you knew? I don't know what the next step is, but I know there is a next step.
Yeah, I think it was the moment where, as I sat back, thought about what was happening. I'm former military. I was in the Air Force National Guard, and thought about how I was being managed. And I thought about, to your point, all of the family feedback. My grandparents don't ever leave a good job. I understood in their generation, leaving a good job meant you might not get another good job with benefits. And so they didn't understand, why are you leaving? Why? You have a good job. But I also thought about my father, who's from the Caribbean, who owned his own business. My grandmother owned her own business. My great-grandfather owned their own business and his own business in the Bahamas. And I felt as if I allowed myself to settle, to get comfortable. And I think the message for me was, why are you allowing this narrative from someone else to be your narrative? And I can't blame anyone but myself. But that was the wake-up call. And that wake-up call led to me really making some hard decisions. I loved what I did. I loved living in Atlanta, but I felt like it was time for me to move on.
And we're glad you're here. I remember working earlier, years and years ago, with Destination DC, but it is not the same organization. You have really grown this organization. Talk to us about your growth, your decision-making process, about how you decide what's good for the organization, what's good for the people who are coming to visit, and how they see us globally.
I appreciate that. Thanks for those kind words. I really feel like it's all about evolution. An organization that did what they did in 2019 is probably not going to be as successful. The reality is the pool of candidates, or my team, basically all skew significantly younger than me now. I'm now the old guy. I don't know how that happened, but so you really have to think about the dynamics of leading an organization with a younger generation that have different ideologies. Equally as much, understanding the importance of learning. Learning is both ways now. Whereas we were taught, keep your mouth shut, work
we'll
hard,
tell you, yeah.
and get to that point, and then you might have a voice. Where the younger generations are coming in and saying, we want a voice right away. We don't subscribe to the way you all do things. Why wait until you're 65 to retire when your body starts breaking down? We want to enjoy life now. We were not taught that way. So I think the goal for me with the team is to keep them engaged by listening and learning from them, but also, as an organization, How do we continue to be cutting edge? How are we authentically ourselves in terms of talking about the dynamics of a city like Washington, the dynamics of an industry like mine, that there are 700 destination marketing organizations and there are less than 9 CEOs that are black or brown. And equally as much, making sure that our marketing is tied to truly focusing on the diversity of Washington as a destination. The local community doesn't always understand and respect that because they feel like you're diluting Chocolate City. And as I remind the local community, I respect where you're coming from. I happen to be a black guy, so I get it.
Really?
Go figure.
Okay.
I said, but in that space, you have to recognize that the audience, the community that we serve now, and even as you talk about the black community in Washington, if 10 people were in a room together, more than likely 3 of them are from a different country. So you have to understand the dynamics of what's important to visitors. Not all visitors, as a matter of fact, very few are interested in our voting, the fact that we want to be 51st state. So not pushing back on why we don't include that in our marketing, but getting folks to understand that when was the last time you went to a destination because you heard of their laws and you felt like you wanted to be there for that particular reason. It doesn't resonate. So our goal is to always find ways to promote Washington off of the mall, promote our communities, the diversity of our communities, and that means truly the 100%, the gamut of diversity, the 185 embassies that really influence our community, and expose those visitors to the fact that we're more than just what they see on CNN or BBC, mostly all of their lives.
But, to your point, now you can go to Petworth and there's a restaurant. Or you can go to, east of the river and there are restaurants and there are places, there are museums and all of these kinds of things that you're talking about that didn't used to be. You just kind of went to a hub in Washington. So now you can go any place. Like, I personally want to live in a diverse community. I didn't think when I moved here originally that Washington was that diverse. But when I moved to New York and saw that, I learned more because I was around so many other different backgrounds, different foods, and all those kinds of things. And that's how we learn. That's how we get together. If you are trying other foods and other places and travel and all those kinds of things. But how do you, as an African-American male in such a high-profile job, how do you navigate the challenges? Rather, if it's the day-to-day, do you run into anything about color? How do you navigate all of those things? Because you're in a pretty unique position that you just don't see. It's not a ready job it's specialized.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the question. Locally it's different because most of the stakeholders, especially elected officials, either are from a diverse background or understand the importance of diversity. We're a membership-based organization, so every restaurant, for the most part, hotels, they all focus on membership within our organization because there's a benefit for them. But then there's the outward facing. How am I promoting Washington and Paducah, Kentucky, or parts of the U.S. that may not necessarily embrace diversity as much? And that's always been, it's more along the lines of how do you promote if we're promoting Washington to the European market, the way we go about doing that is going to be totally different than when we were working with South Africa and promoting our destination there, because again, you're really, there's certain places. I mentioned we have offices in 7 different countries, and usually the question is where: China, India, London, which is not a country, but UK, but London specifically, New Zealand, Australia, Mexico, Canada, and Brazil. And the reason why we have offices in those destinations is because we see the biggest opportunity for more visitation. But the sell is different in every organization or every part of the world. When we're selling to the Chinese market, diversity doesn't resonate with them. When you come from a country with 1.5 billion people and they're mostly Chinese, they're not necessarily understanding why you're marketing diversity. But they are understanding the opportunity to taste Ethiopian cuisine or architecture and other aspects of our city. If we're marketing Washington and the European market, we just returned from London on Sunday, they're knowledge seekers. So they want to learn more about history. They have their PhDs in American history, whereas most Americans have their PhDs in world history or different other aspects of history. So our marketing towards them is different. The Brazilians, they love to party. Yes, they will go to the mall and they will they'll go to the museums, but they want to have a good food experience. They want to know more about our nightlife. They want to catch a football game, which is soccer, and they want to go to outlet malls. And the list goes on in terms of how each part of the world views travel and what is appealing to them. We do studies on, politics in America. We had a very, with the 44th president, an amazing time, whereas the global community loved America. And then that dynamic changed significantly. Yeah. Did that affect people wanting to come to the United States and to Washington, D.C.? In some parts of the world it did, in other parts it didn't. So there's no one size fits all in terms of how our marketing is done. Now, when I'm talking to the local community, when I go into Ward 8 and I say to them, it's detrimental that you're the only part of Washington that identifies itself as a ward. You don't identify yourself as the communities that, I live on Capitol Hill. I'm in Ward 6, but I don't say I live in Ward 6.
I'm in Ward 6 too.
But when you are, what I've said outside of Washington, I get it. I understand why, your pride in Ward 8. I said, but from a global perspective in marketing the destination, Ward 8 does not the wording does not resonate as appealing. So how do we tie your community into diversity, entertainment and sports arena, the food scene there, historic Anacostia, and the neighborhoods, which will resonate with visitors coming to that park.
Yeah.
Frederick Douglass House.
So
Absolutely.
all of these things that you're telling us today is part marketing, but it sounds like it's innate that you have something that you have specialized into targeting and knowing what information and what change, what information needs to be given, right, and what changes need to be made, so that it's all a win-win, which is phenomenal.
Yeah,
Mr.
absolutely.
It is.
Stop calling me Mr. Ferguson.
Mr. Ferguson.
No,
we've
but
known
you're
each
right.
other for so long.
We have.
But how do you nurture yourself? How do you, in a wonderful marriage, long period of time, how do you step out of Destination DC and nurture Elliott? What do you do?
Yeah, it's funny. This came up in conversation yesterday. I was at interestingly enough, another gala. Washington does not have a shortage of galas, but this is This is the Levine School, and it was an amazing event at the arena stage. And I was sitting next to a philanthropist, and we were talking about, what do you do when you're not working? And my team will tell you that in a perfect world, I'm at home in my basement eating a peanut butter sandwich, watching TV, because there's so many times professionally, especially with travel internationally and domestically, that I'm out all the time. When I'm home, I'm more of an introvert. I'm walking the dog, doing things that are under the radar, so that I don't have to put on that persona as the tourism guy for Washington, D.C. I am, but I enjoy, I say that in one breath, but I also say that if I didn't enjoy what I do, I wouldn't do it. And it's important that people understand that supporting events and being a part and being present locally is equally as important. I can't do it all. And then, go on a road trip for 4 days to the UK and come back and immediately start getting into tons of events and activities. So I love downtime a lot. I love Netflix in the basement.
Okay. And I mean, I get it. I'm sure our listeners get it as well. Mentorship. Did you have someone that you could mentor, that could mentor you during this process?
George, I did, but I did not take advantage of mentorship the way I should have. I had mentors when I was in the Air Force. But what I'm doing now is paying it forward and being more of a mentor, utilizing my space with Destination DC. We have a foundation, the American Experience Foundation, whereas we solely focus on getting kids from disadvantaged communities to, we call them outbound or inbound field trips. Even if we get kids from DC.
I just saw that you were in New York.
We're in New York, exactly. So kids from Washington to New York. And they went to Showtime at the Apollo. I've never been to the Apollo, but they've done. What we do is we expose kids to the impact of travel, because as a kid growing up in California, my dad always used to get us out. We had a motorhome. We get in the motorhome. I'm like, we didn't have the technology that exists today. You get in a vehicle with a bed, you're gonna go to sleep. I remember him yelling, "Get out of bed! Look out the window! You're gonna learn some stuff." And we rolled our eyes. But as I tell parents today, kids do pay attention, and that really, that experience really ignited my interest in travel. And so the goal now is, how do I get kids out of their circumstances and get them to understand that there's more that they can see and do. So we offer scholarships, mentorships, internships, different things through the foundation. And working with the DC public school system that has hospitality programs, we're doing it while they're in high school.
Okay. Exposing
them to hospitality through a different lens, but equally as much exposing them to opportunities. Because once you leave your community, and if people don't realize is that poverty really limits that opportunity, and in some cases, kids never leave their communities ever. So
it's generational.
It is generational, and the foundation really makes a big difference in terms of how do we expose kids selfishly to hospitality, because again, I want to see more Black and brown leaders, but also how do we, excite them in a way where they say to their parents, "Hey, let's get on Metro and go downtown and go to museums," which is really exciting. The other thing I'm doing is working with Howard University as the executive in residence to the Marriott Sorensen Center, which is a few years old. Arnie Sorensen, the former CEO of Marriott, unfortunately passed away from cancer. So the foundation for the Marriott family said, "Hey, we want to make sure that Arnie's desire to see more diversity in industry comes to fruition." So by being a part of the center, we're working with the various different disciplines at Howard to expose the engineering students to opportunities in engineering. Do you know that airports need engineers? To expose them to CEOs that happen to look like them that run airports, like the Tampa airport and the Atlanta airport and the Baltimore airport. So I'm really enjoying that. And, we have an amazing intern from that program that's working with us, because selfishly we want them to, again, consider a career in hospitality.
Wow, that's amazing. What, in our final minutes, would you like to leave with our listeners? Something, a new project, or something that you would like to, in addition to what you just said, for someone young or someone thinking about a career change, what would you think about them coming into your industry?
Well, I think that the key thing is knowledge is power. And, the one thing I'll say about hospitality is that it's different than the automotive industry, because it's so narrowly defined, people get it. Hospitality is much more broad. It employs more than several other industries, and the economic impact nationwide and globally is significant. So the goal is to challenge yourself to learn more about the industry and understand that there are so many different career opportunities. My wife works for IHG Kimpton, and they have a person that solely focuses on even the scent, the smell that you smell when you go into these properties. Yeah. But that never resonates. That there are engineering students that work in major hotels, and they're architects, and there are opportunities in medical field within hospitality. So at least think about those things. From the standpoint of Washington as a destination, especially to the Washington community, play tourist in your own backyard. Don't wait until that cousin or that high school friend comes into town to then try to, because what happens is that when you do that and you say, "Oh my gosh, why don't I do that more?" And then 5 years has gone by and you haven't done it. So we have an amazing city. people need to. I encourage Washingtonians and folks in the DMV to experience more about what we have to offer as a destination. Our website, washington.org. I love when people, especially locals, say that I used to go wait for the Friday edition of Things to Do in Washington to come out, which was in print, but now we go to washington.org.
Oh, wonderful. And
Yes.
they can just go online, and if they want to reach out to you or any of your staff, they can just go to that website you just named?
They can, but more importantly, if they're coming for a leisure visit, clearly every opportunity, everything that's happening, festivals this weekend. You know, in the month of May, there are lots of festivals. There are a lot of conventions. It's not the cheapest time to come. There are suggested itineraries of things to see and do. You know, we cover everything from sports, nightlife, outdoor activities, theater, retail. Everything is on our website in terms of how to position yourself to have a good experience. And in most cases, every city has a website similar to ours. Ours is the best.
It is. Well, thank you so much for coming on Inside Style. We've been talking with Elliott Ferguson, who is the CEO of Destination DC. Again, I thank you. I want you to come back and finish this conversation, and please bring your wife the next time you come.
George, I will definitely come back.
You've been listening to Inside Style. My name is George Worrell, and remember, real style starts with being comfortable in your own skin. We'll see you next time.